Welcome to Backstories, the podcast where we dig deep into the untold tales behind the people, places, and moments that shape our world. Every month, we'll uncover the hidden narratives that inspire, surprise, and challenge us. So, grab your headphones and get ready to journey into the past, one backstory at a time.
Returning storyteller, Mr. Baltimore, Dave, my best job.
So I was a Kelly girl. No, wait a minute. So this was the early 1980s. I'm in my 20s. I was living with my girlfriend Daria 6 miles east of here down Frederick Avenue in Irvington in a rundown carriage house that I was slowly renovating. A few years earlier, I had gotten my bachelor's in history from UMBEC, and after that I lived in a carriage house in the woods outside of Olympia, Washington. I was now back in Baltimore, and I was working as a high-rise window washer, which was a pretty cool job. But I quit that job to enter a 3-week study. It was a medical study sponsored by Hopkins University. That was the best job I ever had in my life. The most transformative, the most rewarding. In return for 20 days of residency, I got $800 and a career. The study took place in a basement of a Hopkins building in a lab that was designed to observe the effects of long-term isolation for NASA. There were 3 subjects in each of 5 rounds of the study I was in. I was in round 1, and I later found out that I was designated subject number 1. Each subject had a small room, maybe 15 feet by 15 feet, which included a tiny shower that cleverly transformed itself into a toilet and a sink. For 20 days, we had no watch, no clock, no windows, no television, no radio, no newspaper. And of course, there was no internet yet. For 8 hours, we slept in our little room. For 8 hours, we were active in our little room. And for 8 hours, we all moved to a common room that had a little dinette, living room, and a tiny little gym. Immediately before I entered this Hopkins study, my friend Kurt bought my first computer with the understanding that I would pay him back with study money. I intended to spend the entire 20 days in isolation teaching myself how to use a personal computer. In this case, it was the Commodore 64. We have an older crowd here, clearly. It was a legendary early PC with the computer built inside the keyboard. I also brought a 12-inch black and white tube television, more of a cube television, for the monitor, and a cassette tape recorder to save our data on. I still get a kick that we used this, for my first computer, the digital storage was the same medium, the same cassette medium that we were playing our music on. I also brought into the study a reel-to-reel tape deck with built-in speakers and 1 tape. It was a 3+ hour long 1950s audio production of the complete Hamlet, starring Paul Man for All Seasons Schofield. Every day I taught myself the basics of the basic programming language while listening to Hamlet over and over again and semi-consciously absorbing phrases from Hamlet. But I have that which passeth show these but the trappings in the suits of woe. Now, the most remarkable thing about this study was that we weren't guinea pigs in a NASA experiment. We are actually lab rats in a marijuana study, determining how pot affects your ability to perform tasks. This is the published study results. It's entitled Motivational Effects of Smoked Marijuana, Behavioral Contingencies and High Probability Recreational Activities. I read this. It's entirely impenetrable to me. I'd like to pass it around. If any of you speak Clinicese, maybe you can tell me what the top line results of this study were.
I'm not high enough to read that.
Okay.
I don't speak Marowese.
By the way, I wonder how many of you have had your best job ever documented in an impenetrable academic study. So every other day, we got stoned out of our gourds on U.S. government-grown pot. And this was some 40 years before recreational pot became legal in Maryland. Once a day, a voice would come over the intercom, and it would tell us that we had to open this little dumbwaiter and take either our marijuana cigarette or a placebo cigarette and put it in a little ceramic holder that had a long, thin, clear pneumatic tube attached to it, so that every time we took a hit, there would be a ding, and a toke would be recorded. On the days we got stoned, when the disembodied voice would say it was time to move into the common space, we would slide our doors open and lean our heads out into the hallway and say, "Stoned again." Then I stationary biked for an hour, and we would watch this VCR tape of Star Trek, the motion picture, or play cards or Scrabble or Yahtzee or chess, and then we would go to sleep. Anyway, I entered the study a window washer, and when I came out, I was started on my career in IT. Within 3 years, I had my own PC company, which I am now finally beginning to wind down in this, my first year of semi-retirement after 38 years in business. So to recap, computers, Hamlet, legal pot, money, career. It was better than a trifecta, it was a pentafecta, and it was the best job of my life.